Welcome to the EarthWorks podcast, where our team will share the jargon of carbon from many of our turf friends from the past 30 years.
Hi, everybody. This is Joel Simmons, and this is the EarthWorks podcast. I am very happy to have back a friend of many, many, many years. I've known him since he was a small puppy, and he is now infamously known as Kevin Mercer, the author, and he has published a really great piece of work, dude. I mean, you sent me this a while back, and I worked through it. I'm going to hold up a picture. This is a picture from the screenshot on Amazon, and this is where you find the book called Environmental Solutions for Grounds Management. And man, I'll tell you, you've really done a hell of a job of kind of going through everything that you've been doing. Now, you've been in the industry. I don't even know how long you've been in the industry, probably as long as I have, but for a lot of years, right?
Yeah, a little over 30 years now. Thanks, Joel. Yeah, a little
Wow.
over 30 years
And
now.
for a man who's only 35 years old, that's impressive.
Yeah.
I think
Sorry.
I met you. I think I met you when you were in St. Mary's, and then you ended up working at Vassar, and then you and I did some work together when you were at Lawrenceville School.
Yes,
You
sir.
actually got to meet my son on
Yeah,
Take Your Kid to Work Day, which was kind of cool. You
yeah.
spent some time at Denison University, and you've just finished. Your book came out on Labor Day weekend, right? So it's
Yeah,
really
Joel.
really fresh off the thing. I'm going to put my glasses on. I want to read in the very beginning of your book, Environmental Solutions for Grounds Managers. You have a really great piece. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it's called Groundskeeper Reflection. And you go through this and you say, a groundskeeper is an unknown artist, balancing forms of emotion, science, and meditation, awaiting the cold winter dismissal and preparing grounds canvas for its new spring painting from an array of herbaceous colors with precise and gentle strokes of passion. I read that again this morning, and I have to say, and I've known you for a long time, I'm pretty damn impressed. I mean, that's
Thanks,
well
Joel.
written. It's very artistic. It's a little poetic. I think maybe Jack and I can teach you a little kumbaya on the guitar, and you can go out there and start doing some poetry and the whole thing. Let's get into this. What I'd like to do, if you're good with this, is kind of walk through the gist of the book. And again, it's entitled Environmental Solutions for Grounds Managers. And you deal with three major sections. And the first section is actually, it seems like it's the longest, and you can correct me at any point if I'm wrong. The storm water management section, where you go through a whole bunch of stuff, and I want to go through that, in some detail. The second section, which was fascinating and got some great pictures in here, biodiversity habitats. One of my favorite sections was the whole section on bee identification, which was great. And then, of course, and you know me well enough to know that this will be my favorite section, the last section, which is entitled Carbon Fertility and Composting. And I read through the book, dude, a dozen times. I must have missed where my name came up. I don't know where, it must have been in a paragraph that I blew through or something like that. But you and I actually did talk quite a bit about this while you were working on this. How long did it take you to write this thing?
Well, it took a long time. It took almost every bit since 2004 till present, Joel. I just wanted to make it more understandable and not confusing. And I think that's the point that I want to try to get this book out. There's a lot of groundskeepers out there. I'm sorry, grounds managers too, that are really trying to do the best they can and get confused with all these laws and regulations. So this is something simple that they can kind of follow. Like you were saying, through the stormwater and through the biodiversity and through the carbon process of carbon making compost tea or compost without that's very simple, without authoring their program is what I was trying to say.
Yeah.
So yeah, it took me a long time, but I wanted to do something that was right. I wanted to do something that was kind of easy to understand and something that we all can do as an industry. The reason I wrote this book, Joel, and yes, you have been a mentor. I'm sorry, I have to include you have
I'll
been a great
stop. I'm
mentor,
just kidding you.
and you taught me a lot.
Oh,
Just
stop it.
I mean, when you're reading the carbon, you probably saw like, man, I was talking to Kevin about this stuff. He had taught me a lot, and also through indirectly through Jerry, your partner. I mean, he was just a
Yeah.
brilliant man when it comes to that stuff.
You
But yeah,
you actually referenced Jerry's book, I noticed, and Bill
yeah,
McKibben's book in here, which was nice.
yeah,
Our agronomist from Logan, but of course Jerry Brunetti's book, Farm as Ecosystem, and
it was brilliant.
which is which is not an easy book to read, but there's a lot of good
No,
stuff in there. But thank you.
it took me a couple more books to understand that book, but it's still,
Yes,
but
exactly.
it does. But it just really some valuable information from both of those books actually. But yeah, it took me since 2004. I started this with a good friend of mine named Dr. Minner, Dave Minner, who is retired in the Virgin Islands now.
Fishing most every day, I assume.
Yes, sir. You know
Yes,
him.
he is. I'm sure Dave is fishing almost every day, right?
Yes, sir.
Let's get into this because I want to help people understand the direction you took. It's kind of interesting how you set this thing up. So you really started with stormwater management. I assume that was by design, that you wanted to really kind of drive home the point of, and let me just read some of the sub chapters here. And again, I'll put my glasses on. Stormwater dialect, which I found interesting. You started talking about some of the actual verbiage, stormwater nutrients, prevention methods, rainwater collection. I mean, you've got 13 sections in here on all sorts of things. So go through that and tell us your thought process and the important highlights of what you were trying to get across when we're talking about, as a grounds manager, talking about managing and controlling, this whole important piece of the business.
Sure. Through professional organizations, or even when I hear through people, I kind of came up through the business, as you know, down in Southern Maryland, right there, where the Chesapeake Bay is, and was taught very, very early in my career about stormwater dialect. I think the most improper thing I hear is best BMPs, which stands for best management practices. That was really directed for your stormwater management program. Like you probably understand, that like IPM is used so much out of context.
Yeah.
So I wanted to make sure that the context is here with the dialect first. Then, like you were saying, as we're moving on, and when grounds managers or grounds directors or even golf course superintendents, this is really a very good book for about any types of grounds
Any
organization.
turf manager, really, right?
Correct. And I just want them to understand this, that, and many of them already do. There's a lot of us out here that are trying to do good for the environment. And this book, I'm hoping, is to promote that. So yeah, we get into the dialect, then we get into what causes, so what causes these nutrients that we're caught, like from nitrogen, phosphorus, et cetera, in the waters. It really turns out the sewage is the biggest problem, but this is just something that we can show. I know I'm on this, but you can cut or edit this to us.
Oh
It's
no,
great.
we're going
But
straight through here, buddy.
it is live, huh? So I wanted to showcase the grounds manager, golf course superintendent, the turf manager, as you said, in a way where he can say, yeah, we do have these buffer zones. We do have preventive maintenance. Preventive management
Methods.
or storm methods for stormwater.
Yeah.
So
So
it gets into the
what's
dialect. Go ahead.
no, go ahead. You're on a
So
roll.
it gets into the dialect, it gets into the causes, why it's a cause, why it's a problem. And then it also gets into because you recycle. Some states don't require you or let you recycle stormwater. Some states do. It's a great method of doing that. It's almost like if you ever had an aquarium, it's kind of like doing a water change, right? You're taking out
Yeah.
the bad stuff out of the water before it gets to your local watershed. You put it back into the grass and so forth, filters, right? So these are some of the things I learned early on, that I have pictures and stuff like that in the book of how we did it. Very inexpensive and very, with the pictures on that Bermuda green space you see in the book. Some of that comes out really good. That's actually one of my favorite pictures because it shows the two things which I love to talk about when I do presentations throughout this great country. It's how you can take an environmental functional landscape, and then you can have a gorgeous functional turf field right next to it, and they both can go hand in hand. It doesn't have to be one or the other.
So fitting together in an environmentally friendly kind of capacity. Let me kind of drive down this point here. So let's start with, what is the real issue? What's the problem that you want to have people really understand from this book? Let's start with that, and then let's go through some of the. And again, your book, is really entitled "Environmental Solutions." So let's start with the problem on this section: stormwater management.
Yeah.
And then let's dial down into some specifics that your book highlights here in terms of solutions, and help us better understand that. So what's a grounds manager? Again, like you said, it could be any turf manager, it could be any grounds manager. But what are we really talking about as the real issue that somebody's going to face on a regular?
Great question. So so again, it's based off of three things: stormwater management, biodiversity, and carbon, as you mentioned. The grounds manager, the turf manager this book will help him control things that comes onto his property. So rather it's stormwater, rather it's creating pollinator areas, rather it's restoring your soils. All this can come together through things that they already have. For instance, you could take the food waste, restore your soils through a complex, easy process of making of compost for soil amendments, or using it for compost tea as a liquid organic. I call it. You can add things to it to your compost tea and so forth. You can add things to it like blood meal or bone meal to get your satisfied type of NRP nutrients. But the whole point, and I know I'm getting the weeds here, the whole point is just to get the grounds manager to control things that come in and to preserve things that he already has on his property, as far as bees identification, what
Right.
type of bees, the honey bees. And it's just not bees that pollinate. There's a whole list of pollinators out there that gets into the book of what you can do to help pollinate.
Yeah, you
We
got a
need
whole
the
section on there.
pollinators.
That's good.
We need the pollinators for the local farmers and everything else. So a grounds manager can help control the simple environmental things without really even giving two thoughts about it, but still be a part of the of taking care of the problems that are out there. And these problems aren't necessarily what we cause. Where I just want to do something for the green industry to say, hey, we can do this all together and as a team without changing our overall maintenance program.
Yeah, and you've done that obviously in your career. Let me go specifically to stormwater management. So the first page you have under that on stormwater management, you list actually four things, but the three things or two things that I really want to highlight. You have in here green infrastructure and gray infrastructure. Explain what you're talking about between the two, gray and green infrastructure.
So the green infrastructure goes for just basically like you kind of go through your leads process or go through looking at plant life, looking at how you can promote green sustainability through your organization. The gray infrastructure, well, that kind of goes into what we call it. And I don't have the book in front of me. I'm sorry, Joel, but are you talking about the gray water? Or is that what you
Yeah,
mean?
yeah. So it says here includes things like storm drains, pipes, and
Correct.
detention ponds. These features collect and store stormwater, which can help to prevent flooding. So
Yeah.
you spent a lot of time talking about
Yes. Yes.
specifically structural things on properties, and again, you've worked in schools and golf courses.
Yeah,
So
I understand now. So when I was in New York, that was one of the coolest things is they actually have it. New York's really, ahead. Some states like California, New York, they're so ahead of the curve of the curveball that they know like to put the stormwater infrastructure in, and also so like when it rains and stuff, that doesn't get mixed in with the sewage, right? It all goes separate, and they have a pretty good concept. That infrastructure's in place. A lot of universities, maybe there's a lot of businesses that are already putting that in place, and that's something to showcase, on your property because that costs a lot of money. That stuff's not
yeah, I
cheap. So
bet.
you
Yeah.
can showcase, and then add on to it. So if your company does have a stormwater infrastructure called a gray water system, we'll understand where that water's coming out of. And then, of course, we have examples of buffer management too, that we're from the outlets, it can buffer, filter, and do all great things for this water that's coming out. And most importantly, slow it down and to control the temperatures and add biodiversity to your water buffer zones.
So have you done some of these physical structural mechanisms on properties? I mean, have you actually been involved in dealing with some of these at any point in time, or is
Yes, 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 yeah. Where the grounds come into this, or even any other grounds, turf manager will come into this role, is you have a bunch of engineers that will come up with the system, and but where the water filters out at, where it comes, where does it go to? They might have, some type of vegetation there, but you can really beef that vegetation up. This book will show you how to really control every drop of your stormwater that comes into your property and before it goes out. This through native plantings and so forth.
yeah? Have you been on? I know this to be true in a lot of properties that I've traveled around. It seems like a lot of times a school or maybe even a golf course becomes the wastewater area of a development,
Mhm.
and and obviously that's part of the problem that you're talking about here in the book is a lot of times this water that is running through their properties is not
Mhm.
necessarily the best water, and it's oftentimes causing a lot of
Exactly.
soil problems. I mean, and obviously when you've got puddles and you've got water, being held in soils, and you're trying to create a environment for your community, be it a sports field or a community park or whatever it might be, a golf course. I mean, these are problems. So you go through some of this in the book.
Yes, yes, I do, Joel. So yes, um, we're only borrowing this land, right? So the water is coming through. It should be our own social responsibility of how can we, slow this water down. Because it's doing no good if it's coming on your property at a rapid rate and leaving your property at a rapid rate. That's really not doing any justice. So just doing simple things of slowing the water down, getting it absorbed, getting these nutrients taken out as it passes through your property. Yes, and I do have a buffer management program that I can
Yeah.
share that I can show everyone in the book where it comes from. I call it a primary, a secondary, and then an emergent. An emergent is the shoreline of any waterway or any watershed on your property. It's just a three-stage buffer program that works very, very well. And one of the first things I'd learned in this industry when I started in Southern Maryland off of the Chesapeake Bay.
I read through the whole buffer section and I found that fascinating. There's, a lot of suggestions that seem very common sense, right?
Right.
And obviously the fact that you felt it important to get into the book, maybe it's not so common sense. I mean, go through some of the buffering procedures that you've highlighted here.
Sure. So each state could be different depending on your what's invasive and what's non-invasive. It seems like these days, uh, something always comes invasive, and what's weird through my travels is what's invasive in Ohio is non-invasive in Maryland. What's invasive in Maryland is of course
Right.
non-invasive in Ohio. So you learn all these different things. So basically, the buffer zones start off with you want to start off with a native ground cover, native grasses. You'd like to keep about 25 feet. Then it gets into your secondary buffer zone, which kind of consists of different shrubs and trees and all native, because you see you're also not just filtering or you're slowing down the water, you're also creating native habitats for your wildlife. And then as it passes through your secondary buffer zone, it goes to your immersion zone, which you have plants that do two different things. Some plants will provide food and shelter for wildlife off of the water, but it'll also filter the water, the storm water before it goes into your local watershed. And also some plants, Joel, provide oxygenation into the water that provides oxygen to the water to keep those healthy dissolved oxygen levels healthy for plant and for aquatic life.
And you have a nice chart that kind of highlights the primary, secondary
Yeah.
buffer zones, and then you have a number of charts in the book that really highlight some of the plant
Example.
material. Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
example.
examples, and some of those would be like for the Midwest. I try to mix it up in
Yeah,
all five climate zones, but I think the readers will get the point, and they will understand their native plant selections and from where they're at, and for their buffer zones.
yeah, which makes sense, and it seems like that. As you go through this introduction on the stormwater management, let's talk about this because you broached it already. Best management practices, and you've got a number of ideas that you've listed as BMPs. Walk me through some of the BMPs that you feel are most important for a grounds manager to really focus attention on.
Well, I'm going to go back to my good friend Luc Maison-Pierre when I worked for him at Andrews Air Force Base. I come from a very high-end country club where you just throw money and stuff at, you just throw money at it and preventive, no matter what you're spraying. And Luke really taught me the basics of IPM. I think that's first foremost your most important thing. Your soil probe and your a soil probe in your right hand, a water hose in your left, whatever, and just make sure you know what you're doing. Make sure you understand your soils, you understand disease pressure, and you also understand your nutrient needs and things like that, before you just go out and do it.
Yeah. And that's you've got a number of these BMPs listed in the book. And you go through a number of these type of practices, even
Right.
as simple as clean, I love this one, as simple as picking up pet waste, and I think of that as I live in a city where I carry, the poop bags, and I'm thinking, oh, there's,
Yeah.
I'm reading your book. I'm saying, oh, I do that every day. I take care of this.
Your team will appreciate it too. Trust me. I can tell you that for a matter of
Oh,
fact. Your team would appreciate if you pick up your own, your pet
yeah, the
waste.
dog's waste. Exactly.
That's
And,
one of the things that could lead, into stormwater. A lot of people don't realize that, but if a lot of people don't clean up their waste, right, well, all that goes into the local watershed, and there's preventive maintenance to try to help to keep that from going in there. But yeah, that's just simple solutions. Exactly. Going to that whole IPM section right till, you know, I forget I'm odd. Sorry, Joe, I don't have my book here in front of me, but I'm sure there's plenty you can go through.
oh yeah, you definitely have a whole lot of stuff in it. You even have in the stormwater section a section on rain garden design, which I found pretty fascinating as well. So you kind of help people understand. I mean, that's something that you could actually do at your home if it was a size large enough for that. Which I found pretty interesting. So you're going to go through some of that. You also talk about, and I'd like you to kind of expand on this, environmental impact and cost savings.
Yeah.
Walk me through that section and what you were looking at when you were talking about. Obviously, the environmental impact is pretty, I would hope would be somewhat self-explanatory, but it sounds like you built some ROI on this. You built some strategies to help people save some money.
Yeah. So there's a number of things in the book that could show you that. I mean, let's start with you, Joel, with your products. With carbon, it's an investment in your soil. I never had a problem selling that at any university or college I worked at because it's an investment. We go in once a month with a heavy carbon fertilizer, which replenishes the soil, and then might go.
Well, that would be a good name for a product.
Yeah, I restore, replenish. Yeah,
sorry.
Yeah, but I do believe in that, and I believe that you are replenishing your soils. I call it restoring, replenish, give it a name, but it does, it works because there's so and when you get into the carbon phase of it, you understand there's so much good things that make up a soil, but certain herbicides, fungicides, etc., your pesticides could take away from those soils. You need those in your toolbox, but these are just things that you can basically make out of food waste or even from your products where you can restore the soil and keep it healthy. But yeah, there is a I'm sorry, Joe. What was the other things you asked me?
Well, we're looking at,
off on the weeds so easy.
Yeah, it isn't, is it? Cost saving. So, I mean, you highlight some of these, and I read that briefly, but I didn't get into detail. But
yeah, and there's
it's kind of nice that you give this information out so that you can, people can see.
Of course, a lot of grounds managers. I'm sorry, I'm gonna say turf managers because there's so many variety of turf managers.
Yes, there is. That's
turf
fun.
managers,
can
use this. Yeah, with the I call them ecological areas, naturalized areas.
Right.
Whatever people prefer to call these. And I have different types that you can build for your campus. From straight wildflowers to just regular native grass, whatever.
And you list a lot of that in the book, which is nice. You kind of walk through some of that.
Yeah, but this also saves money. If you're looking at equipment, you're running between $12 to $18 an hour, on equipment costs, and also you add your labor costs, and it's really never a labor cost savings; it's a labor savings, right? Because you're paying the 40-hour a week no matter what, but now you can transfer, your responsibility somewhere else on campus, and
yeah.
Yeah,
That was always one of my favorite when the many times that I've had an opportunity to come and visit you, you are a spreadsheet master, and you've
yeah,
really gotten a great handle on exactly what you were just talking about is the ROI, or the cost management of it. I mean, when you're dealing with solving some of these environmental solutions, you are providing a return on investment, and you are showing, and I think you highlighted it fairly well in the book. You are
yeah.
showing how you've been, how you can save some money by doing some very, very practical and very environmentally sound practices on the property that you're managing.
Yeah, and one more thing, Joel. I mean, and this is also the grounds your turf manager can use it as a selling point too, because through the emissions tour, and if you ever ask my team, I think you did one time, they'll call it, they don't call it the emissions tour, they call it the money tour,
Which
because
is
we're
true.
trying,
I mean, think
yeah,
about it.
and we're
Yeah.
trying to impress students. I mean, if a parent is coming and spending, 50 to $60,000 a year on education, you got to have your grounds looking like that. And some of
Yeah.
the things that we incorporated through this environmental things is we would have places, I call them stop and go places on the emissions tour. And this is where you will have a tour guide from the emissions office with their parents and potential student will have these areas set out or aside where they will stop and look at different things about the campus or the history of the campus. We would take those stop and go places and we will put things like lavender or put fragrant plants in these areas that bees get attracted to, but they're also have calming a sense too from fragrance when we're on the emissions tour.
Oh, so you're getting the olfactory senses working as well.
Yeah,
You taught me that, and I've shared this on our podcast a number of times, and you dropped your name, but the one thing that you did teach all of us here, I know Jack Higgins would agree with me, but man, when you go to every place that you've ever been, really, it's always been a place where you would want to bring your son or daughter to. I mean, it's one of the and this is one of the things I think your book has done really well, is brings this to highlight, is that these practices created an environment and in particularly in your number of your positions on campuses, where you're creating this beautiful horticultural place, and when mom and dad bring their daughter or their son there, they're looking around saying, man, this is a kind of a place that I would like. I mean, I've told this story many times. I remember the days when I took my son around to college campuses with this
yeah,
in mind, and I'm thinking, wow, this place is a dog track. I mean, it's all
right.
dirt tracks. There's hardly any horticulture or any flowers at all. One of the things that I remember of one of your facilities, you had some of the most beautiful hanging baskets, and they hung down 10 feet, and really were just a drawing point. But the whole environmental, I mean, this is more than just trying to save the world. It's the environment that you're creating on your property, which I believe I think you've had a number of presidents come to you and say, of the universities, and say, man, this has done a wonder for admissions. It's done a
Oh yeah,
wonder for recruiting. And why would anybody not want to follow these kind of practices when their business of their property is to recruit students, which is where the money is. I mean, all of us in turf are basically business people. We're trying to sell something. You were trying to sell your property, so the next generation of students coming through are going to say, yeah, man, I had a great experience. It was beautiful. I really enjoyed it. It was calming. And in this day and age, and this as well as anybody, I certainly know, having worked with my son, the whole calming effect. And I love the fact that you're throwing lavender around just to
yeah.
help calm the emotion. What a great place to go and kind of chill out and meditate between the stress of class or the whole environment. But yeah, I mean, my hat's always been off to you
Yeah,
on how
thank you.
well you
I
did.
have to give, a big, 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 big shout out to Dr. Weinberg, who is the president of Dennis University, and he taught me, like, how do you going to sell an education if it doesn't look like, if we don't take care of the grounds? Because, the parents, as we're entrusting us with their sons and daughters, And I have to get another shout out to the best grounds team I ever worked with at Dennis University. And those guys were awesome. And Ann Sherry, give her a shout out. She does a great job of the pollinator areas and stuff. And there's a lot of parents that come in and know exactly now what we're doing because we're all getting older, Job. And you don't have to explain
not
it.
me.
You don't have to. Yeah, you always do. You don't age. I don't know
I
how
don't
you
age.
you
Yeah,
don't
I'm
age. But
still
anyway,
pretty.
yeah, the parents are really starting to understand these pollinator areas, even through
Yeah.
the amusement store. Where when I first started, it was like, hey, how come you guys aren't cutting the grass? Like they didn't get it. They didn't get these whole biodiversity areas. But now, the millennials they get it. I mean,
Yeah,
they
they get it. And you were starting to show, put up signs and all that kind of stuff. Let's talk about that. The next section of the book, you go into biodiversity habitats, types of habitat areas, butterflies, pollinators. I love the section on bees and all the different pictures you have of bees. And I didn't realize there was, all that many bees. You have non-modified ecological areas, modified ecological areas,
right.
installing bird and bat housing, and then ultimately or finally beneficial insects. Are you promoting all of that on the grounds that you've been managing? Is this basically all of these sections part of the community that you put into the grounds that you're working with?
Yes, I all of them except for the bird and the bat houses. I wanted to get into there, but that really came from a student. I forgot his name, but he was working under Dr. Shrewsbury from University of Maryland when I was at Andrews Air Force Base Golf Courses as an assistant superintendent there. And the idea was you put the Burton, the purple martin houses near people and stuff because they like the interaction of people. And of course, the bats, you put them kind of near a stream or something, and then they go out at nighttime and eat all the mosquitoes and all the pests that bother us during the day on the golf course. And the purple martins would help out during the day. It was like a 24-hour bug eating machine.
Right. Yeah, they're pretty powerful at keeping
Yeah.
things under
But yeah, but
control.
everything else we do, we like you mentioned, we try to teach people like, bees are not going to bother you unless you bother them, all right? Except for the yellow jackets, they're the mean ones. They hate everyone equally, okay? But it's
But
really
you're
when
not encouraging yellow jackets. You're
no, we're not.
encouraging
No, no, no. They're
pollinators.
it's me, and that's why I like to get into the identification because it's like minor bees might look a little bit like a yellow jacket, but if you kind of look closely at their stripes, they are different, and
And they're not going to harm you.
yeah, they're not going to harm you. Ground bees, things like that. Bees that are like not solitary bees, I guess they're not colony bees, but solitary bees. I get into that in the book. They will come out like if you're mowing, they hear like a disturbance or a vibration in the ground, like they're going to come out and sting you. It's just to protect them. They're just protecting their
Right,
queen.
right. But
All
again,
their
you're not encouraging those kind of bees. But you did have a lot of
right.
areas on your property that had a lot of wildflowers
Oh
and
yeah.
I mean, some of the wildflowers that you were really promoting were, I mean, first of all, they were stunning,
No
but they
thanks.
were great environments for a lot of the pollinators and the beneficial. So I mean, you were building an ecosystem within that property, and over the years that you were able to really make this happen. All of this that you've highlighted in the book is really was really things that you practiced
Right.
on the property. And I mean, I didn't realize you had areas that were designated. I mean, areas closer to where students would be walking, but you kind of
Yeah.
you had them interspersed all around, right?
Yeah, one of the coolest things we did with that is we took islands and this really was a
Right.
win-win for us. And besides like trimming them with, weed whipping them with the weed eaters or whatever, grass gets on cars, we get complaints and stuff, we just killed them off and put zinnias in there. And I tell you,
Oh, I remember the zinnias. Yeah.
yeah, that really brightens them up. These are things that even if you're in the city, you can just put like zinnias in a parking island, and boy, does it make a big difference, just color wise. And also, you're adding a lot of pollinators there, all types of pollinators. That was a big hit. There's a lot of people, kids, students. They love the flowers.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember so you had them all through the parking lot. How long did it take for the zinnias to take hold? I mean,
It
how
takes
long were
about
they?
6 weeks. About 6 weeks from seed to after your last frost. About 6 weeks.
So you had color on those islands in the parking lots most of the summer long, right?
Oh yeah, all through the summer, and then and we stage it. We plan on different times of the year. For instance, for college, students are gone this summer. So we kind of did this summer program. We called it Big Blooms, where we go around, we give flowers for people. Mental wellness is a thing that we really believe in at Dennis University. We would try to cheer people up through cutting zinnias and flowers through the summer. But then other areas, Joel, we would plant them later. So when the students come back or when the students leave, we would have beautiful flowers from poppies in the, in the
Yeah, the
spring,
poppies are great.
in the summer. We would do a change out in all these, what we call modify wildflower areas. And
I have a feeling anybody that's listening that is working on an environment like that is thinking about this, and maybe their first thought is, man, that sounds like a lot of work. Was it a lot of work to maintain and keep deadheaded and all that stuff?
No. We never got really into the deadhead. So we have a team of 8 people when I was at Denison. I loved every day of it. And the thing is that we would like around fall, when we would get done with the leaves, we would like our poppies to be blooming around commencement, around the second week of May. So we
Yeah.
will plant them like around now, right? Around now, just for the color of May. But then we will plant other areas for like alumni weekend, maybe 3-4 weeks from now. So that when, poppies, of course, so they'll grow over the winter, pop in the spring, late spring. And then we would change everything over, only make certain areas of the campus okay, beautiful for the summertime, but really what we're gearing up for is to make everything pop for when, the parents brought their kids back to school.
And this has become much more popular on the golf course as well. I mean, it's always refreshing. And as you know, I drive through a lot of golf courses, and the ones that really, as you're driving through, the ones that really, impress you are the ones that, they have a on-staff horticulture team, and there's flowers, there's, there's lines of flowers and pots, and, the and think about it. I mean, just like you're trying to recruit students, when you're trying to recruit members at a golf course, I mean, what better and have them come back and be happy? What better feeling to have than driving down the the parking lot lanes and seeing flower upon flower, as opposed to just some dead petunias somewhere.
Absolutely. We have many parents and many students just constantly thanking the facilities for the team's hard work. And it's not a lot of hard work. It only takes like I didn't answer your question correctly, and I apologize, Joel, but it only takes like about a day to really transform about 15-20 acres. It took us a day. We will go in,
Really?
we will mow it down, burn it down, and then we will just go in with a I'm going to give a plug here to Ventrac. It's called Decetivators, and we'll just go in there, rough up the
great machine. Yep.
And we'll just go in there and go 2 ways with we use red and white zinnias. That was the typically Denison University colors, so we will really make us, bang and pop with that. But it doesn't take a whole lot. We'll do that twice a year. It take more time mowing it, every week, than the amount of work we put into it.
That's a great point. I mean, the fact that if you had to cut grass on that thing, and were they ever damaged? I mean, was it ever a I mean, were people walking in and out of the I mean, a lot of times you walk over the islands in the parking lot. Were you getting a lot of damage?
No, I wouldn't say we got a lot. We have a lot of students and parents and faculty and staff that like that will take their pictures in them, and that's okay. That's what they're there for. I mean,
that's kind of cool, though.
But the deer will give you a challenge. I will tell you that the deers at times will give you a challenge.
With zinnias specifically?
Yeah, the zinnias. Yeah.
Yeah. And the nice thing about zinnias, though, like, you mentioned specific colors, but, zinnias come in so many broad color spectrums. You can really just, I mean, any color thing you really want, you're going to find with zinnias. And I'll never forget the poppies. I mean, you did some great stuff there. Let's go to the last section of the book. And of course, my favorite section, the one you talk about carbon fertility and composting. And you've been a leader in a lot of this. I mean, you and I worked together probably 20 some years ago when EarthWorks was just a puppy in the industry. But you got it. You understood the whole thing. So you have a couple sections here: soil biology, of course, my favorite; types of composting, vermicomposting, and then you were a master of compost tea. I remember back in when you were in Lawrenceville that you had a pretty massive compost tea operation going on. How did this all come? I mean, and don't say it was me because it wasn't. You knew it before I
Yeah, you
found
taught
you.
me a lot, Joe. Come on
Yeah,
now.
but so
You're not getting off that easy.
what's the how did the passion come to you to really start to appreciate biological soil management?
Well, I don't know if I should say this on air, but it
Oh, go ahead.
all right. The person that made synthetic fertilizer is really not a good person. The older you get, the more you kind of understand things.
I wasn't a necessity at the time, so that's fine. And we
Yeah,
use synthetic fertilizers. The idea is just
they
you want to
do.
make sure you're balancing it with carbon.
They do use synthetic fertilizers, and I use synthetic fertilizers, but
Right. So
the carbon is just, I mean, it's what the soil needs. It's like
yeah,
it's how the whole matrix works. It's you feed the soil feeds the plant. If you feed the plant, well, the plant's going to peter out, and there's nothing left from the soil for the plant to survive. It's really not rocket science, but
yeah.
you feed the soil is going to take care of the plant, and soil is just so much good things from and if you really get good at it, you can start controlling different fungi and stuff like that with the soils too, and depending on how complex you want to get with it, but it's all starts with the soils. I mean, that's the first thing we learn, right?
Well, and yeah, obviously, I mean, that's what I've been preaching my entire career, and it's where my passion is. But it's really basically carbon to nitrogen ratios, and it's how a soil works. And you've done a really good job of creating diversity on your properties. I mean, you've done composting with green waste from the property. You've used that material in compost. You've used, EarthWorks products over your careers and other organic carbon-based fertilizers. But you've gone way beyond just buying some organic fertilizers. You've really kind of taken it to a whole nother level and found ways to promote the biological life of the soils that you've worked with. And you and I have had conversations. One of the things that I'm going to throw this at you, and I think a lot of it had to do with the way you were managing soil. I remember, I think it was Lawrenceville School. I walked on that property, and there was an area under trees that had never seen grass. You
Right.
started managing it correctly. You started getting carbon in there. You started using the proper, varieties of grass. I remember as you and I were sitting there, the president of the school came out and said, "We've been here." He was there, I don't know how long, he said, 20 years, and never seen grass in that, in that courtyard area. And I think you had the same thing happen to you at Denison as well. But I'll
Yeah.
never forget that, and basically you were treating the soil correctly. You were getting carbon in there, getting compost in there, using the correct varieties, and then not over fertilizing those areas. And they were stunning. I mean, you had grass
Thank
under
you.
dense trees,
Yeah.
and this is where kids are walking constantly. That's the hardest thing on a school environment is you got tremendous foot traffic and people just laying out there on their picnic blankets and hanging out and studying or whatever. But that was one of the things that really drove this home for me, and I was very impressed, my friend, about how you were
Thank you.
able to pull it all together.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's the carbon. You don't see it right off the bat, right? You don't see like how to explain this. You just don't see it right off the bat, but about 2 to 3 weeks, you do see like a big improvement, and then when you do see it, it lasts longer than sometimes it should. Carbon is it's a key. It's such a key. I use it in my program. It works. And the good thing, speaking about ROIs, is the more you build up the carbon in your soil, the more you can start backing off eventually.
Let's not go down that road, dude.
All right, all right,
I
all right.
got
I'm
bills
sorry,
to, I
George.
got bills to pay and stuff like. But no, it's funny you say that because when we, and you've heard me say this, and everybody
Yeah.
that knows me has heard me say this. But yes, the idea is that you should be using less, and just again the list that you have here. Obviously, you go through a whole section on highlighting soil biology in the book, but then you talk about types of compost, and you talk about vermicomposting, and talk about the work you did with compost tea. I mean, you've done compost tea probably everywhere you've been, and it's been fairly successful. With your property. So how are you doing it? What are you doing? What's the trick? Is it work? Does it not work? Is it a pain in the ass? I mean, walk us through what you guys did for compost tea work.
Okay, so yeah, it works. I wouldn't be doing it, but
Right.
definitely we. there's a step-by-step program that we show where I use an 800-gallon tub, and then we start off with water, and if it's chlorine water, you want to bubble it out, because the bubbles will trap the chlorine, take it outside,
Oxidize out the chlorine.
right. Um, and then there's a matrix. Now, I was lucky. I had some, I was very lucky with some of the students. So one of the students that we had a few years back at Dennis University, where we took lettuce, we took coffee grounds, we took carrots, we took whatever this young lady heart's desire, and we took all these different, and then we put it through the process of vermin composting, which are red wiggler worms. They'll eat the leftover waste of the coffee grounds or the lettuce, or I think we actually had potatoes and some other things. They'll eat them all. Then they will, go to the bathroom. We will use the worm castings. We'll put them into the
Go
bag.
to the bathroom. That's nicely said.
Yeah. And we would put these worm castings, depending on, and also write the foods and what the foods were, and we were go through the whole process to make the compost tea that is illustrated in the book. But we sent them to labs, and I'm not just saying kind of like to regular labs. These were labs where they have where the white coats are looking at the little nematodes and stuff.
Right, they were using microscopes. Yeah,
that's right. It was a very, very, very expensive test, but what we found out was with some really cool things, and I know that other people has done this, but I wanted to know when I wrote this book. So yeah, we have a bunch of lists of different food items that we found through our reports that give you a significant, not great, but it still gives you a significant amount of nitrogen, gives you a significant amount of potassium and of phosphorus. And you can kind of
as well as trace minerals, by the way. I mean, tons
right.
and
Oh yeah,
tons
that's
and
important.
tons of trace minerals in that
That's
material.
even more important, Joel.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to get in the weeds. You know how I get. But
No, that's all right.
But anyway, as you mentioned and complimented on this hanging baskets, I mean, we watered over, I'm going to say at least over 1,000 gallons a week of compost tea just for the hanging baskets alone. Right. And and why that's important. So when they first started, we would use things like cucumbers that helps with powdery mildew. It's not a for sure thing, but if something can aid and help keep powdery mildew off of your plant, you can do it. I mean, if it helps, then do it. You can use anything to your advantage. So we would use that matrix and that program for our compost tea for when we're starting out flowers, to maintain the flowers, and even put like using the bananas and things from food waste that has high potassium to get them through the summertime, through the hot weather and so forth. Yeah. So it's kind of it's all there. And this is to help you. This isn't, I wouldn't say this is a for sure thing, solid gold. Use this, you never have any problems, you'll sleep at night. It's not that. This is
no,
just,
it's not that.
it's
But
just,
I saw it, at a number of the properties that you were working on. I was very impressed with the vermiculture. You brought in red wigglers, and you were breaking down all that food waste, and of course, there's all that mineral in there. How detailed is the book in those two sections? Is it detailed enough that if I'm interested as a grounds manager in starting some vermiculture in the back, or some compost tea, can I get enough information from your book on how to really kind of go down that road, or is it just a teaser?
no. I think this is really good for the beginner, and I think that, and also I explain why compost tea or composting is good. I explain why, and I explain how to make it. And I'm going to explain what works for me, which I know will work. And I think that if anybody have problems, man, just reach out to me. I would love to work with anyone to, because what I write, I believe in. And I had some really, really great teams over the year that we went through these environmental friendly programs, and there's a lot of words on the wall for the team's efforts from doing these things. So it does work. It's not just, smoke and mirror. I hate when people say compost don't work. I'm like, well, maybe you don't know what you're doing.
Or not using good compost.
Not using it correctly. Right?
Yeah. You've spoken on this at some of the grounds management meetings, right? I mean, I know you've been a speaker actively on the circuit, and I believe you've gotten a handful of awards on some of these things as well, isn't?
Yeah, I have been blessed and the teams I work with, they've been blessed through the Sports Fields Manager Association, the Professional Grounds Management Society. They have really recognized, and they are always the leaders out there trying to get sustainability, out there
Right.
in the front to show like, hey, we do care. And there's a lot of us that do care. And I think this is just a good way for us to get our word out there that we are stewards of this planet, and that we are trying, or that we could just put up buffer areas. We could just start making places for bees or for pollinators, even if you have small parking lots, and even start using the food waste, which would cut down on the cost of for your waste management, and
Right.
using this into composting or compost soil amendments. I mean, if you have the infrastructure, if you have the capability of doing it. I mean, they even make machines now, Joel, that would just take all kinds of food. Like the days where you can't use meat or you can't use this in compost, they got these. I forgot they're called, but there's these machines that you can put all the food in it in 48 hours. It turns it into a basic, like I'm just going to say a 333 soil amendment, and
Yeah.
and you could add things to that, rather as blood meal, bone meal, your products, which C3 up always put into these type of products,
Thank
especially
you.
molasses, because it just makes the biodiversity of the juice
Yeah.
just on steroids. I mean, just puts it on steroids. But I won't get into that. You get me excited talking about that. But yeah, I think that every facility could help them out with this just by them reducing using their food waste. And look, I'm not telling a grounds manager or superintendent to use this on their fairways or their putting greens until they get comfortable with the product. I would tell them, like you're saying, if you're a golf course, put this on your flowers. Just put it on your flowers. See the difference, make
Yeah.
the compost pea. Use all the food waste you can get your hands on, or put it into the roughs. I mean, if you're a golf course that doesn't have that's on a tight budget, use it on your roughs. If you're a grounds manager, you can use this around your dorms, things where you don't have your money allocated for.
Right.
Most universities, and for good reason, and they want to put their money into their money tour, and they should, because they're trying to sell their product. But you can also take these compost tea and this food waste, besides paying a garbage company, a trash company to take it away, you can use this and use it for your soils around areas you don't have money for. So I think this is kind of the whole logic to what I'm trying to get across here.
Some common sense stuff, which is kind of cool.
Yes,
Let
sir.
me, I hate to say this, but we're going to run out of time here. And I want to ask you, and I know this is something near and dear, but you have a lot of interesting ideas that some folks are going to look at and say, it's a little different. How did you get, and I know, certainly at Denison, your team was phenomenal. How did
Yeah.
you get your team to understand the value here? I mean, you've come into an environment where this is not necessarily conventional wisdom, but you have a lot of experience. How did you get your team to really understand what it was? What the heck am I doing? And what's up with this dude? Is he just nuts, or is he really got something going here? And
Okay. I think,
obviously, certainly at Denison, I mean, those guys were great, and they got it. They really had a passion for it. How did you instill that in the team, and how do you make that happen?
well, Denison always have a special place in my heart, like I said. That team, I think it's also culture, but that team was ready to eat up everything. I went in, I explained to them, look, we have bare lawns, we have empty beds, we have things like this. I think, I told them, look, the proof is in the pudding. And there's a funny story with that I don't want to get into, but it said proof is in the pudding. And when they start seeing the proof, they're really starting to buy in. But what really triggered that team, and it's something that team taught me at Denison, is, and I don't mean to get sensitive here, but it was we went in there with this one, and I'm telling you, if anyone is listening to this podcast, if you could put in your core values of your shop that reflects the mission statement of your organization, put concern for others. When you put concern for others as one of your core values, I'm telling you, the sky is the limit. They will listen to you. That opens up trust. That opens up communication. And I gotta tell you, we're in a different world these days, Joe. The hierarchy is out. It's not it's not entertaining. I don't even think it scares anybody anymore, this hierarchy type of management style, because there's much availability out there, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Just concern for others, be yourself. And I got to tell you, when they start seeing the results, and when they're up on stage, in their suits and ties, getting awards for this stuff, they really just bought in, and they understood it. And not only they understood it, but they lived it every single day. You've seen them, Joel.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think go in there, try to talk about your program with your team. Say, hey, look, this is going to reduce labor, this is going to bring the aesthetics up. We can focus on other areas of the golf course or of your university or campus, wherever your institution is. You start putting these these biodiversity areas where you can start. Now you got labor hours you can put other places. Now you might even have a little extra money you can put extra places, because you reduce the cost of equipment, fertilizer inputs, and all that. And your team is going to start seeing it over the years. And lastly, let them have buy-in. Say, look, I'm thinking about wildflowers here, I'm thinking about using this food waste carbon here. Well, let them be a part of it. Let them say, well, I can't, let them choose the areas, to start off, and then it just builds from there, Joel.
And obviously they taught you a few things, didn't they?
They taught me a lot. They taught me the true meaning of a team, to be honest with you. I don't know how else to say it. They just taught me the true meaning of a team.
Well, buddy, I got to appreciate your time. I want to show this again for those
Thank you,
who
Joe.
haven't seen. This is available on Amazon. It's called Environmental Solutions for Grounds Management. And it really highlights a lot of your work over the years
Thanks, Joe.
and the successes you had. But I love the fact that you really incorporate the word solutions into the environmental
Yeah.
situation here. And, again, having read through this for the most part, there's a lot of stuff in here, and I think it's something that anybody growing any kind of plant material, quite honestly, not just grass, obviously. I mean, landscape material, flowers, probably even within the greenhouse environment. I could see where some of the ideas that you've presented in the book are going to really help people out. So,
Joe,
my
thank you so much for this plug. And for people out there who don't know Joe, you really do stand behind. I mean, you just stand behind people, man. Even when, people get down or luck, whatever, you're there to pick them up. You never forget anyone that you come in touch with. And it's just because, even if people don't buy from you, you're still a good guy, you're an honest guy, and your products work. And I'm not just saying that because, I want to give you a plug because you're giving me one. I want to say that, Joe, because, it's important. I really cherish I'm not going to say how long we've known each other, but we've known each other
thank
for a
you.
long time, and I cherish our friendship. And I think that it is. I hope I'm saying this right, but EarthWorks represents a deeper connection, and you're living proof of that. You go out here, and and Jack too, and you guys just, and Kevin,
The
you
whole
got to
team.
go out there, and you make it personal, and it's a lost art, and thank you for that.
Well, thank you, and there'll be $100 bill on your desk tomorrow morning for all of that. Appreciate that.
Thanks,
Kevin,
Joe.
thank you so much. I really wish you the best of luck. I hope
Thank you,
people
sir.
go and find it again. I mean, you got it on Amazon. I'm quite impressed by that alone. The fact you can go to Amazon and find this book.
Yeah, it's
I
at
didn't-
Barnes and Noble, Amazon. It's like, yeah, it's out there.
Good.
Thank you. But yeah, if anybody interested buying it, yeah, if anybody has questions or ever just want to just talk about the environment, feel free to give me a call. There's a link to my website, I think, also there on Amazon too, that links you to my website.
Oh,
But
perfect. So if you do go to Amazon, find the book, you can actually get a contact to you. So you'll be sitting around with tons and tons of folks calling you
yeah,
because
we're like, but the idea was, to write the book and then to promote my workshops, like to go out there and do some workshops or stuff for people that might
yeah.
be want their team, like say, hey, can you train my team, or can you train us, or could you show us examples of what you've done over the years? And basically, it's just 20 years of failures to break it down to 73 pages
Right.
in the book.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
I'll be happy to share my 73 pages of knowledge with anyone that wants to hear it through a workshop. Give me a
Yeah.
call. I'd love to help anyone out.
And again, I'll end with this, but the like you say, the proof is in the pudding. I mean, the proof is there. I mean, those campuses that I remember working with you on were always stunning, horticultural, gardens. I mean, they were just beautiful places. And any, and like I said, any parent coming in with their, their daughter or their son, would be very excited about it. So what a great, I mean, it's just from just a strictly business standpoint, man, it just makes sense. So my hat is off to you, my friend. I wish you the best of luck with the book. And I would also say to anybody listening, if you haven't become a subscriber to the EarthWorks podcast, please do. We'll bring as much cool information and some old friends that we can, like Mr. Mercer. Kevin, best of luck in everything you're doing. And thank you for joining us.
Thank you, man.